What's worse than a cold-blooded killer taking the life of a loved one and showing no remorse for it? In the courtroom, defendants have a chance to see the grave consequences of their actions. Devastated families, crying children, people left empty and angry forever. But some of them are so far gone that they feel nothing seeing this. Even worse, some get off on it. In this video, we will explore some of the most outrageous killers who show no remorse for their actions. In the early hours of November 11, 2022, tragedy struck on West Michigan Avenue near Howard Street as 21-year-old Bryce Salter fell victim to a fatal shooting. The incident, which unfolded in a parking lot adjacent to Western Michigan University, started with an altercation between him and our convict Damien Lang.
Court records show surveillance video caught Lang fighting with Salter before Lang pulled the trigger. Lang admitted to later taking apart the gun and getting rid of the weapon.
Surveillance footage revealed Lang approaching Salter and engaging in a heated argument before escalating the conflict by brandishing a firearm, knocking Salter to the ground, and then shooting him. Following the shooting, Lang purportedly discarded the weapon in an attempt to conceal his involvement in the tragic incident. Attempts to save Bryce Salter ended up futile, as he died on the way to hospital.
A Lansing man is sentenced to between 70 and 100 years in prison for the November of 2022 murder of a Kalamazoo man. A judge today ordering 29-year-old Damien Lang to spend decades behind bars for the second-degree murder of 21-year-old Bryce.
And now, Damien Lang was in court for his hearing and sentencing. Lang was charged with open murder, felony firearm, and carrying a concealed weapon. The sentencing being on Monday, December 4th, 2023 in the Kalamazoo County Courthouse in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where the sentence was read. Judge Paul Bridenstine gave Salter's family a chance to give their victim impact statements. First was Brandon Salter, Bryce's dad.
Just want to express to you first and foremost the difference between this and who my son was a father in his upbringing every single day. See, my son was going to be magic. By the time my son was my age now, the help and what he would have done to the world would have been amazing. He had everything. He had the looks, the smile, the concern, the care. He was the perfect blend of everything.
Then his mother.
My son was a great kid. He had 21 amazing years. He has a daughter now that is 4 months that will never meet her dad. She's split image of him as well. And because of Damien's selfish acts and taking my son away from this world, I have to in fact take on that role and responsibility with my son's dad so that we can take care of a child that will only have memories that we get to share. And the fact that his family member just died, and the fact that he could lean in his chair and smile at the same time shows that he has no remorse.
The man found guilty of her son's murder was smiling at the camera as she told the judge that her 4-month-old granddaughter would never meet her father.
That he could lean in his chair and smile at the same time shows that he has no remorse. I forgive him because that's how I am and because that's what God would want me to do.
The courtroom was packed with Salter's loved ones listening intently as the judge sentenced 29-year-old Damien Lang of Lansing.
As far as count 1, murder in the second degree, as a fourth habitual offender. It is the sentence of this court that you serve a minimum 70 years to a maximum of 100.
The judge had more to say.
Mercilessly gunned down by you. No opportunity to be the father he could be and should be. It's clear to me that there are a number of broken hearts and they may never mend.
The brokenness was felt by everyone present as Bryce's father, Brandon, yelled out his last words to Lang as he was surrounded by deputies and escorted out of the courtroom. Lang shouted back, yelling obscenities at the family, still donning his spiteful smirk.
Go cry about your snacks you don't get. Hey, I never cry.
Even though Lang had shown no remorse for his crime, the family expressed great relief with the sentence.
We're very satisfied with the amount of years, mostly just for the safety of the community. I mean, this man should never be allowed to walk the streets again.
However remorseless Lang's behavior in court was, it pales in comparison to that of Jeremy Christian. This is Jeremy Christian. Christian was taken into custody in Portland, Oregon, for the murders of 2 men on a Max light rail train. Christian fatally stabbed and killed 23-year-old Talisa Murata Namkai Mecca and 53-year-old retired Army officer Ricky John Best in May of 2017. He also stabbed Micah Fletcher, 21, but he lived. And this is the point at which it all started. Christian was caught on camera screaming racist and anti-Muslim slurs at 2 adolescent black boys. His actions annoyed a number of other passengers. They confronted him and barred him from the frightened teenagers who had moved to the back of the train. After more attempts to defuse the situation, Christian threatened to stab the victims with a knife and ultimately did so. But the story doesn't end there. Christian is seen here departing the scene following his 12-second period of madness. Christian got off the train at the next stop. He was followed by several other passengers as they dialed 911. When the police finally showed up there, he was taken into custody while bragging about having killed 2 people. Christian was charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder, as if killing 2 people in broad daylight wasn't enough. It is what transpired in court that astounded the judge and jury. He not only expressed no remorse for what he had done, but he also made threats to murder one of the relatives of the victim in court. During the trial, one of the victim's relatives read a victim impact statement. This is Christian's response to the statement. In the end, Christian received 2 consecutive life sentences. Evidence of his criminal history was also revealed throughout the trial. The day before the killings, it seemed that Christian had beaten a woman and yelled racist things on a different train.
Oh, looks like we got a Christian or Muslim bus driver. I'll stab you too.
Christian identified as a far-right extremist and a white nationalist. For these additional charges, the judge increased his 2 life sentences by 25 years. But compared to Keith Allen Ferguson, Christian's disrespect in court is nothing. This is 40-year-old Keith Allen Ferguson. According to authorities, in November 2014, he killed his father-in-law, James Weber, and his wife, Tiffany Ferguson. The resident of Kalaska County, Michigan, was accused of 12 felonies, including kidnapping and first and second-degree murder. Tiffany Ferguson, 42, the wife, had made the decision to divorce Keith Ferguson after 17 years of marriage. It was during a fight about the divorce that Keith attacked Tiffany, shot and killed her while their 4 children watched. Keith then drove the children to Tiffany's parents' house, where he also shot and killed Tiffany's father, unfazed. After killing his father-in-law, Keith fled to a neighbor, kidnapped the 59-year-old woman, and locked himself inside. Keith resisted for 7 hours before giving up and releasing her.
Stand me? I'm not doing this in front of these stupid cameras.
When Keith appeared in court, he demonstrated that he was not at all sorry for his acts. He seemed disinterested in the courtroom proceedings during his trial. He swore all the while at the judge, the court staff, and the people in attendance. Tiffany's best friend, Carla Seating, read the victim impact statement prior to the judge giving his sentence. She mentioned that Tiffany had always been terrified of Keith, and that's how she realized Keith was trouble. Keith also said in court that he didn't want to see or talk to his children ever again.
All right? Because of the respect and safety of my children, I'm not saying nothing, because they're going to see this. They don't need to hear that.
Prompting Judge George Mers to question his sanity. Keith entered a plea deal in which he admitted to killing his father-in-law and wife, and the remaining 10 charges were withdrawn. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And what did he have to say to that?
I'll see y'all in hell.
Just when you think humans cannot get any more inhumane, we meet one of the most bizarre cases ever. Danta Wright was being charged with murder in Detroit, Michigan. Following Jordan Clay's fatal shooting at the age of 18, he entered a guilty plea to charges of felony firearm possession, armed robbery, and second-degree murder. Wright didn't withhold any information. He admitted that he had mercilessly shot Clay in the back of the head when he and 2 of his friends were trying to rob him. As though his horrific murder wasn't horrible enough, Wright behaved in a way that astounded the entire courtroom. The 17-year-old convicted murderer appeared to see his sentencing hearing as a comedy show, while Clay's mother fearlessly made her victim impact statement.
His cousin, she's asked me to read this on her behalf. Jordan Michael Clay, born July 26, 1990, murdered October 4th, 2016. I've lost my only child, my son, my baby, my friend. More than that, I've lost laughter and love. I no longer have the hope of having grandchildren. I've lost the enjoyment of holidays and birthdays and of everyday life. But now in my life, I walk this journey alone. I no longer have that luxury because that was carelessly and cruelly taken.
What did this kid do? He started smiling and acting as if he'd done nothing wrong. He even posed like a top celebrity and told his family he would be out soon.
I just want to tell y'all, I'll be home soon, R.I.P. Keon, I love my family.
Even the judge was taken aback.
That's all you got to say.
David Schwartz, the sitting judge, had had enough of Wright's disrespectful conduct. He thought about turning down the plea agreement and putting him on trial to receive a worse punishment. Schwartz criticized Wright, stating this.
But watching you sit there, smile and laugh and shake your head like this was no big deal, I'm very tempted to just say, I'm not going to accept this sentence agreement. We'll go to trial, and if you're convicted of felony murder, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. That means you'll die there. That's what I'm tempted to do.
Honestly, you can't blame the judge for feeling tempted to throw the book at him, but Wright's attorney jumped in to defend his client's behavior.
Your Honor, my client asked me to apologize to the court. His smiling was in no way meant as disrespectful either to the family, to the victim, or to this court. My client is 17 years old. He has some emotional problems and frankly was scared.
Justice did prevail eventually, albeit not in the brutal way that some may have wanted. Wright received a prison term of 23 to 50 years. There's no doubt that Wright's crimes and behavior in court were disgusting. However, it was not the only time a convict laughed in court, as shown by the case of Scott Nelson Edward.
You committed the worst possible crime.
Next, we are in the 9th Judicial Court in Orlando, Florida for the trial of Scott Edward Nelson. The 55-year-old man was charged with first-degree murder following his admission of abducting and killing Jennifer Fulford, a 56-year-old woman. Nelson testified during the trial, giving startling testimony with unnerving openness.
Who killed Jennifer Fulford?
I did.
Nelson was a career criminal who had served time for armed robbery and had spent over 10 years in jail before being released on parole for 4 months. He said he was rebuilding his life, but then he lost his job, his home, and eventually his desire to live a normal life under the confines of society.
You kick a dog enough times, they tend to bite back. And really, they just don't care anymore.
The prosecution maintained that Nelson's agony was exacerbated by the affluence and posh surroundings around him in Winter Park, Florida.
These were the people who had nice homes that you couldn't live in, never would live in.
I was hungry. I was starving to death on the streets of Winter Park. People don't give a damn about nobody in this world. They don't care.
Nelson admitted that he started planning a home invasion in the hopes of stealing enough money to run and avoid serving his parole. He can be seen in this security camera footage purchasing supplies.
You bought zip ties.
Yes, I did.
You bought duct tape.
That'd be correct.
You bought a knife.
I sure did.
You, at that point, formed a plan to use those items. You knew that somebody was going to pay for how you've been treated.
That is very accurate.
Nelson then gave a chilly explanation of how he chose a target to hit a luxurious Winter Park residence where Jennifer Fulford, 56, was employed as a nanny.
Plan was, you're going to force your way in.
No, the doorbell works better. She opened the door and let me in.
But then pressed on the details of what then happened inside the house. He appeared to have selective amnesia.
Comforter off the bed so that you could wrap Jennifer Fulford in it because you wanted to conceal her from the outside.
No.
You didn't wrap her in the comforter.
No, I didn't do that. Maybe she did. Maybe she was cold.
Say that last line again.
I said maybe she was cold. I don't know. I don't know. She ended up cold.
The prosecution was unfazed by Nelson's wicked humor and allowed him to speak freely, giving the jury time to process what he had said. Nelson did not steal any valuables from the house. Instead, he pushed Fulford into her vehicle and is shown here taking out cash with her ATM card before heading around 20 miles south of the city. According to Nelson, once he was in a secluded area, he opened the back of the car where Fulford was lying still alive.
Why did you bind her hands behind her back?
I would imagine so that she couldn't leave.
Why did you bind her feet with duct tape?
I imagine so she wouldn't walk away.
And why did you wrap her entire head in the duct tape?
Probably so she couldn't scream.
Off a dirt road in an area thick with vegetation, he stabbed Fulford to death and left her body.
I never intended to kill that woman. It was not in my heart to do that. It wasn't what I had planned. I didn't want to kill that woman. She'd never done anything to me. I believe the term is collateral damage.
Nelson was found guilty of the first-degree kidnapping and murder of Jennifer Fulford. A surveillance video from the ATM and DNA evidence discovered in the victim's car helped seal his fate. He faced the death penalty and again took the stand during the penalty phase of the trial.
How has your mental health been affected by your previous incarceration?
I am a homicidal maniac.
The jury sentenced Scott Nelson to life without the possibility of parole for the murder of Jennifer Fulford. However chilling and bizarre Scott's statements in court were, it is Tyrell Webster's behavior that will shock you. Tyrell Webster was being charged with the grisly Ohio murder of Grover Cleveland Watson Jr. Tyrell shot and killed Grover Cleveland Watson Jr. in April 2012 after they got into a fight at an Osage Avenue house. The dispute intensified, according to Watson's sister, Carolyn O'Brien, after Webster became aggressive with his own expectant girlfriend. Tyrell Webster was born into a life of crime. He was the brother of the infamous tri-state murderer, Lonnie Webster, who was incarcerated for many years. His behavior in court was disgraceful, notwithstanding the heinousness of his act. The victim's sister, Caroline O'Brien, spoke to Judge Jody Lubers during the sentencing hearing and related how her brother was killed on his birthday.
And he was taken from us on my brother's birthday, which hurts very, very.
She initially expressed forgiveness towards Webster, explaining that he didn't fully comprehend the consequences of his actions.
Just to ask God to forgive you, because you didn't know what you were doing.
This is when Tyrell laughed. Being legally blind, O'Brien asked the judge to help her find Tyrell in the courtroom so she could address him directly. It was at this point that Judge Lubers told O'Brien that Webster was giggling as she was speaking.
Just so you know, he's laughing right now.
In a powerful retort, O'Brien warned Webster that once he was in prison for the rest of his life, his laughter would eventually stop. She went so far as to say, in a fairly colorful way, that he would wind up being someone's girlfriend there.
I really don't care about this, because you know what, you laughing now. But the moment they get you behind those prison walls for the rest of your life, you will be somebody's girlfriend. And that smile will no longer be on your face. It will be tears.
Any last expectations for Tyrell's leniency dissipated during his sentencing hearing. Judge Jody Lubers routinely questioned Webster about his educational background, to which Webster arrogantly replied,
"Do that matter?"
Yes, it does.
After a 2-week trial, the jury proceeded to deliberate without delay. They came back in an hour and delivered a guilty verdict, finding Webster guilty of murder. Webster was ultimately given a prison term ranging from 18 years to life. I have never seen a cold and unfazed killer like Scott Nelson, but who among them shocked the hell out of you? Let us know in the comments down below.